Hi, my friends. Welcome back to Traffic Jam with Cam. This week, we're going to be talking about burnout, what I've learned about it. I also just read a book called Burnout, so this is also kind of like a book review of it, and I'm going to be telling you guys a little summary about what I learned in the book, figuring out if I have felt or experienced burnout before, and just, a little chat. Of course, before we jump into the topic, I have got to give you guys a recap of what's been going on this week. First of all, it was Adam's birthday. My husband Adam, he celebrated his birthday 26. He had his 26th birthday yesterday. Why did I say that so weird? He celebrated his 26th birthday yesterday, which I am recording this on a Saturday. His birthday was Friday. So, anyway, I don't know why I picked the most confusing way to just say that, but it was his birthday. And we celebrated today, Saturday, the day after his birthday, by going skydiving. When I say that, I mean I didn't go skydiving, but I went with him to support him, and he went skydiving, and I think that's pretty cool. That is like mad brave of him, because that is definitely like my number one biggest fear. I am scared of heights. I am 100% scared of planes, and you will not catch me jumping out of one, but that is what he wanted to do. And we drove like an hour and a half, well, with traffic. It was actually like a little over 2 hours to the skydive place that seemed like it was in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of many cornfields, which, if you know where we live in Northern Virginia, you got to drive quite a while to run into cornfields. But when we got there, I was like, oh, it's like home in the West. I remember those good old days when I lived there, and when I will be living there again very soon. Anyway, we got to the place that was like 2 hours away. It was this tiny little hangar, this little building, and a runway literally in the middle of cornfields. And he signed a waiver. He got some training, which really wasn't as much as we thought it was going to be. Got harnessed up. His tandem guy was like, okay, this is how you're going to hold your arms when I give you this signal. When I give you this signal, you're going to do this. Okay, good, awesome. Then they walk out, and Adam was the only one doing the tandem jumping, and everyone else was doing like single dives. Like they had all gone through the training to do that. And they all go and get in the plane and fly up, and I followed along with the plane on Adam's flight radar app. He really loves planes and has a fascination with them. And so he has a flight radar app, and he was showing me how to watch and track different planes around that area. And so I was watching their little plane go up, and they reached 13,000 feet. And that is the height that they got when they jumped out of the plane. And I saw their parachute open. Okay, let me back up for people who don't know about skydiving. And all of this information I'm telling you, I just learned today. So here you go. I'm sharing it with you. So the plane gets up to 13,000 feet. You scooch forward with your tandem person. You kick your legs out of the plane, and you wrap them under the plane like you want your feet to touch the bottom of the plane. Then they like rock you like 1, 2, 3. You somersault out of the plane, and you're going like 120 miles an hour. You're free falling for 50 seconds to a minute before the tandem person releases the parachute. You parachute down for 5 to 10 minutes, and you get to the ground, and that's your jump. So it was really fun to watch that. I took lots of pictures. I'll post pictures and videos on my Traffic Jam Instagram. But it was super cool to watch. I was very glad I was a spectator and not a jumper, but I enjoyed getting to see and be a part of the experience and not be the one that was jumping out of a plane. So Adam said that it was really awesome. He loved it. He's glad that he did it, and he'd be fine not doing it again. He said it was a good, like, one-time experience, which I don't know. I feel like he would do it in the future. But he said that it is rough on your ears. Like, he didn't have they didn't give him, like, a helmet or, like, earmuffs. Like, headphones. I don't know. Anyway, nothing to, like, cover his ears, but the tandem people and, like, the single jumpers had helmets. So I don't know if that would be better, but he said that his ears really hurt afterwards, and it took him a long time after landing to get hearing back. And he also said that for the first, like, minute that you're free falling before the parachute, you can, like, barely breathe. So he said that was intense, but he's glad that he did it. That was mostly our big birthday celebration, but yesterday for his actual birthday, he had to work. He works from home, and while he was working, if you don't know, right now we're moving back to Idaho, where we're both from, and in this month before we move, I left my job as a dental hygienist, and I have been just enjoying other things that I love, like painting and dancing, drawing, doing podcast stuff, reading, packing up, and getting everything ready for the move, which is great. It's awesome. And so I am home right now, finishing up all our things here in the DC area. So yesterday, for Adam's birthday, I got to make him a cake. And I have only done this a few times because it's so dang time consuming. And it's worked out great that I am home right now because I found some really awesome Cake by Courtney cake recipes, and I showed him maybe like 10 options of cakes that I thought he would like. He looked through them, picked the one that he wanted, and I was like, okay, this is part of your birthday gift for me. I'm going to make you this, like, big fancy cake. So I did, and it took so much time, like a few hours yesterday, but it actually was really fun to do. And I am glad that I did it. It turned out well. Tastes good. The only problem is it was going to have this awesome, beautiful chocolate ganache drip at the end, and I had frosted it. I did the crumb coat, like I made everything from scratch. I frosted it, did the crumb coat, let that chill, brought it back out, did the last layer of frosting. All the lines were so clean, it looked so good. Then I melt the chocolate to do the drip, and it was just really thin, like thinner than I wanted it to. And I was like, okay, well, let me just try a little bit and see. Immediately when I poured just the smallest spoonful on the cake, ran straight down the side all the way down to like the bottom of the cake board. And I was like, okay, well, even if it goes all the way down the side, that's fine. So I'm like hoping that it will kind of harden, and like doing it really slowly. And the drip looked kind of cute for a second, and I go to do something else. I went to like grab the candles or something, come back around the corner, and I look, and it's just like the top didn't stay thick. Like the whole top of the cake had the chocolate ganache on it. No, it didn't stay, and almost all of it like dripped off the side. So it's just like this very thin layer of chocolate on the top where you could like see through the cake. And then the sides, like all around the sides of the cake board, was just this pool of chocolate. So a chocolate moat around the cake was just, what a good way to top off my long hard work of making this beautiful cake. But like I said, it tasted good. He was happy and excited about it. It was an oatmeal chocolate chip cookie cake, so it had like oats, chocolate, cinnamon in it. It was good. It was a solid choice. Oh gosh, I'm already getting way too off topic. We're 10 minutes in, and I have not started talking about what the actual topic is. Okay, let's jump really quick to the traffic jam of the week, which I could say that the chocolate dripping off the cake is my traffic jam, But believe it or not, I have a better one. I also was making biscuits for Adam's birthday because my family growing up had this tradition that you could pick your birthday breakfast. Usually it was always cinnamon rolls. And so we've continued this tradition, and Adam's request was the biscuits and gravy recipe from Joanna Gaines' cookbook, which I've made before, and it's very time consuming, but they're really, really good. Just takes forever and a half. So the night before his birthday, I made the dough, got that all prepped and ready to go. Woke up early the next morning on his birthday. He started work. I put the biscuits in the oven. I started making the gravy. I'm feeling like Joanna. And I go to get the biscuits out of the oven, and I have oven mitts on both of my hands. But as I'm pulling the pan out of the oven, it like burned me through the mitts, and it like kind of scared me. I don't know how it was like that hot, but it like burned my fingers through the mitts. And so I kind of like, I jumped and I dropped the pan kind of like against the oven as I was like shutting the oven door. And the actual pan like bumped my forearm where it wasn't covered with the mitt, and it burned so bad. So then half of the biscuits like go flying onto the ground, and I drop the pan on the ground. I am just like shocked by what just happened, and I hurry up and like pick the biscuits up off the ground and set the pan onto the top of the oven, like the stove top, so I can set that down. My arm is burning, so hot, and it like stings so bad because I don't know how the pan was so hot. Anyway, I take off the mitts, I run it under freezing cold water for a long time. I like putting ice cubes on it, and it just, oh my gosh, it hurt so bad. So now the next day I have got 2 awesome little burn marks on my arm that look really rugged, and luckily they don't really hurt anymore unless I bump it hard. But my battle scars from being a baker and chef for my husband's birthday, that is my traffic jam of the week. Okay, on to burnout. So I wanted to first talk about this book. It was recommended by someone that in my church, we did a, what's it called? It was like a professional seminar for women. And at one of them, a lady that was speaking recommended this book, or was talking about this book. And it's called Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle by Emily and Amelia Nagoski. And it was a little bit different than I expected to be, like the format of the book. It was more so like storytelling and talking about people's experiences, and then them at the end of that, or each section, or like each chapter, talking about why people feel like that. I took notes as I was reading this book. I mean, not religiously, but just when I started reading the book, when I found things that were interesting, I wanted to write them down because I thought, okay, this would be kind of cool to do a mini book review and just kind of talk about what's in the book. Just, I'll give you a summary so you don't have to read it. I mean, you can still read it, but one big thing that I thought was really interesting that they talked about is the human giver syndrome. And they were explaining that this syndrome is a problem, or a thing, I guess, that a lot of people have. And a lot of the time it's like, well, pretty much it's like every woman has this. And it's like the idea that since you are born, women are kind of, they grow up and they're expected to be giving and accommodating, just to people, like in general. And as they were kind of explaining more about it and giving examples, I found like that is true for me at least. And one of the authors she explained it like this: human giver syndrome is the false contagious belief that women have a moral obligation to be happy, calm, pretty, generous, and attentive to the needs of others. They also, after explaining that a little more in detail, talked about how because of this need or this like expectation, that is kind of what causes a stress cycle, and what wears us out as humans is this kind of moral obligation to feel this way and like tend to others' needs and always appear to be happy and calm and positive, and that really wears us out, and that can lead to burnout in like all areas of life. Before going any further, I guess I should talk about their explanation of what burnout is. And they were explaining that there are tons of definitions for burnout, and that sometimes it can be misunderstood, it can be overlooked, it can maybe be exaggerated. So a lot of different things that burnout can be. But what their definition of it was, and when I'm saying they, I mean the two authors are sisters. So they said burnout is emotional exhaustion and a decreased sense of accomplishment. I had heard of burnout before, but I wasn't really sure like exactly what it was. And I feel like sometimes that can be a term that is used lightly. And so I didn't know what that really was, or how I know if I had experienced it and what it really means. And I feel like for me, I mean, now knowing that burnout comes from a lot of different things, I think I definitely felt that with my job, and just like very unmotivated, and outside of work, I still struggled to put work and my emotions and feelings about work aside. Like I really was having such a hard time in my job, and like me talking about this and like how I was feeling, that's not just burnout. Like there are other like situational and like mental health things, like other things involved too, of course, but I definitely think like burnout was a part of it, and I didn't realize that until after. And I don't know, learning about this just made me feel more like, okay, other people deal with these feelings too, and like the experience of being stuck in this slump and not feeling like you're accomplishing anything when you're like working and you have this job and you are like serving people, or you're earning money for your family or whatever it is, that to still not feel like a sense of accomplishment from that, and to still feel like down and just like in a slump from that's a symptom of burnout. In the book, they also talk about completing the stress cycle. So a lot of stress and like anxiety can come from not completing the stress cycle, which I had never heard of before, but pretty much like more stress and anxiety and like chronic stress comes from stressors that aren't fully addressed. So like they talked about how we get stuck in the cycle because the stressor keeps happening and it doesn't go away, or it's like not addressed. We also can get stuck in the stress cycle because of like social obligation. So like the human giver syndrome I was talking about, like maybe expectations that you think are on you can prevent you from completing the stress cycle. And then also if it's like easier or safer to stay stuck, then these are reasons why you might not complete the stress cycle. So ways to actually complete the stress cycle, they list a lot of ways things that you can do, I guess, to help complete the cycle. So pretty much when you have a stressor, or there's something that like triggers you or causes you to feel anxious or stressed, you tend to like your body reacts to how that feels, whether it's like your heart starts racing or you start to feel overwhelmed or whatever it is. And then for whatever reason, you can kind of get stuck in that and not fully relax or fully like let that stressor resolve. So the main ways to complete the stress cycle that they talked about are exercise and movement, breathing, so like specific breathing techniques, slowing down your breathing, being more mindful of your breath. Third, social interaction, talking to other people. That one's kind of self-explanatory. 4, laughter. 5, affection. 6, crying. So those are the top 6 things that I wrote down that they talked about. Those are things that you and me can do to help complete the stress cycle, and that helps to prevent further stress from happening and also from like getting stuck in where we're at and feeling like helpless. In the next section of the book, they talked about how important meaning is, like meaning in your life, finding something that's meaningful to you, which seems pretty straightforward and pretty basic, I guess. But as I was reading through and learning about what having like a something or like meaning in your life does to your body and like your well-being and your mental health, I was like, oh, okay, that actually makes sense. So they were talking about when you engage with your something, whatever it is, like your a talent that you have, a passion that you have, you like, everyone has something in quotes in their life that is like their thing, like they're connected with. So like for me, I was thinking about like, what is this for me? And I think for me, it's dance. That's definitely a something for me. Dance is the thing that I do that makes me feel the most like at peace and also the most like myself. The most joy that I have ever felt, all of those times are like when I'm dancing. So that's an example of a something for me. Another example of like my something, I would say, would be the gospel, or just like learning about Jesus and feeling the Spirit, whether it's at church, when I am reading scriptures, when I am listening to music about him, when I am worshiping in the temple and I'm feeling close to God. Like that is another time in my life where I feel the most joy and the most like I am, the most like who I am, the most like myself, I guess. So what they say is when you engage with your something, thus making meaning in your life, you're healing the human giver syndrome in yourself and the people around you. Isn't that so interesting? So let me read that one more time. When you engage with your something and thus making meaning in your life, you're healing the human giver syndrome in yourself and the people around you, which pretty much means like do that thing that you love and the thing that makes you feel like yourself. That's what gives you meaning in your life. And then by doing that, you're healing the human giver syndrome because you're doing something for yourself. You're taking time to do something that is healing and growing and appreciating your own self instead of just constantly putting like all of your time into everyone else around you and not putting time into yourself. Hopefully this makes sense. Really quick, back to what I was talking about, like my something. They did talk about how to find your something, and the way that you can kind of figure that out is to ask yourself, what am I doing when I feel most powerfully that I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing? So that's kind of a confusing question, but if you ask yourself, when do you feel the most like whatever you're doing is what you're meant for, then that could be your something. The authors also compared finding that something to Moana, which of course, I loved Moana is my girl. I am sure that I've said this in another podcast episode before, but I think in another life I was a Polynesian girl, and that's also who I am deep down inside. So I just have this love for like Polynesian culture, and I am so fascinated by it, and I really love Moana. So anyway, they said your something inside is inside you, like Moana. We find it already in ourselves. So it's like not really something that's developed. I mean, I guess it could be, but they explained it as your something is something that's already within you, which I thought was kind of cool. Like it's something that you're born with, and you like take that love and that passion and that like part of yourself with you throughout your whole life. Okay, to finish up with this, talking about the book part of this episode, I wanted to share what these authors said about rest. And I'm sure that a lot of you have struggled or had these thoughts the way that I have about rest. A lot of times I find myself so easily feeling guilty for taking a break or for having a rest, whether it's for an hour of a day or whether it's like a whole rest day. I also think that's kind of an Enneagram 3 thing, but there are definitely other types that experience this. And also just like I was talking about before, women, the human giver syndrome. It's like it's easy to like feel guilty for resting. I think some people really do struggle with that because it feels like, well, why am I taking a break or like stopping right now when I could be doing this, and then maybe even if you do stop to rest and take a break, you just can't take it easy because as you're sitting down and kind of letting your mind wander, it's like, I'm going to think of 10 more things to put on my to-do list. Like I cannot slow down. And I don't know. I just, when I sit down or take a break to do something maybe not on my to-do list that's spontaneous or like will be a fun, mindless, kind of relaxing thing, I feel like I'm being lazy. However, the authors in Burnout, the Burnout book, they said our brain needs rest to perform better. Mental rest is not idleness. It's recharging and necessary to keep going. And this is something that I have definitely talked about before in counseling with my awesome counselor lady. She really gets on me for this, about how mental rest is not idleness. And it's something that, I mean, I know I'm going to have to keep being reminded a lot because I don't know. I worry that anytime my mind is not going, that I'm being idle, but that is not true. Because in this book and in many other books and studies and things that people say is that your brain does need rest to perform better. Like it's not being lazy to rest. It's actually like a physical need because our brain is going and running all the time. Like if you're constantly running, you're going to get to a point where it's like, it's not going to be up to you. You're just going to be like forced to shut down kind of because your brain needs a break. So I'm trying to remember this and work on being easier on myself, giving myself grace, not getting so wound up about taking a break, taking it easy, especially in this time in my life. Like this, I mean, in a year from now, in 10 years from now, in 50 years from now, this is going to be such a short time in my life where I am in between jobs and I don't need to waste time feeling guilty about it because I'm not being idle. I'm not being lazy. I am taking mental rest, and I'm also doing things that I love too, which is feeding my soul, and it's helping me to recharge. So if anyone else is like in a similar stage right now, I'm with you, and it's not idle. It's not lazy to be doing what you love, and also to just be taking it slow and taking a break, because your brain does need rest. And if you feel like you're not able to like rest right now, or you're in a really busy season of your life, I hope that you can look forward to a time that you're able to, and just know that like the season that you're in is not going to last forever. And I hope that you can find some pockets of time to do things that you love, and also to take time to do the things that they listed and talked about before, like physical movement, or being more mindful of your breathing throughout the day, or laughing, or crying it out, or what was another thing, social interaction, things like that can be small little windows, I guess, throughout your day, throughout stressful times, throughout busy seasons, to feel more like yourself, to give your brain rest, to reset, and to do something more for yourself so that you can be a better version of yourself, and therefore share that with other people. And then, like they said before, that affects your life in a positive way, and then also the people around you. Okay, done with that portion of the podcast. We're almost done here. I mostly wanted to talk about the Burnout book and give a little review on that, but I also just wrote down a couple random notes that I just wanted to say because I feel like they kind of went along with it, and also they're just things that have been on my mind. I don't really know where I'm going with this, but I just thought maybe someone else is feeling like this too, and so it can just be, a quick little chat, and maybe someone will relate to this. I don't know. But I saw, or heard, I guess, a thing on Instagram. Morgan Harper Nichols, I've talked about her before. She's an amazing writer. She has a really uplifting Instagram page, and she's the one that posts the affirmations that I talked about before. So she posted a video. I don't know if it was like on her story or something, but she posted that you should, instead of saying, what do I do with my life, you should say, or ask yourself, what do I want to do in my life? So like, it's not just, the way I took it, I guess, is it's not about what you're going to do with your life, like whether you're going to have this amazing career or what you're going to accomplish, that's not the focus, or maybe that shouldn't be so much our focus, but rather have our focus be like what we want to do in our life. So like, we have this time on earth to have this earthly experience, and how are we going to use our time? Like, honestly, we are so lucky that it's up to us. Like, a lot of it, we have a choice of what we want to do, and how we want to spend our time, and who we want to spend our time with, like how we want to fill it. We do have a lot of choices that are up to us, like how we spend our life and what we want to do in our life. And so I think that's a really good mindset shift to have and to work towards, is not so much focused on what you're doing in your life and what you're accomplishing, but like the small in between things that you find meaningful, and that focusing on that can make your life better. Last thought. This is my last note that I had. I watched, these ideas are coming from in social media things that I have seen, but there's a lot of good social media out there, and I have really actually been enjoying following pages on Instagram and TikTok that they post really uplifting content. And so anyway, I found this video. It was actually an audio that a girl had shared, and it was pretty much just talking. She posted it on her birthday, and she was talking about how when, like, say she turned 26 and she's like, people are saying, oh, like, now do you feel 1 year older? And she was like, not really. And then the audio just kind of went on to explain that you are a part of every year that has come before you. She talked about how each birthday is not like feeling like your new age, but celebrating all the ages that you've been before. And I thought that was really interesting because when I think of birthdays, like when I turned 23, I was like, okay, now I'm 23. Like I'm not 22 anymore. That's kind of sad. But the idea of me being 23, but I'm also 22 and 21 and 20 and 19, like that's, I don't know. I think that's a really cool thought. The other thing that she said was that there are parts of you like from different ages that you should be celebrating and that's okay. Like also she was saying because you're 1 year older doesn't mean like you shouldn't do or can't do the things that you did when you were younger, and that the pieces of her from like all the different ages are still a part of her, and she's like celebrating that. So her example was she was turning 26, but sometimes she still laughs immaturely like she's 17. Sometimes she still plays and is like playful like she's 10. Sometimes she cries when she's having a really hard time like she's 3. Like I just thought that was kind of a unique way of looking at birthdays and age and life, and just kind of an overall uplifting and kind of like hopeful idea. With that said, I will wrap up the podcast just by saying that I appreciate you for listening, and I also just hope that you learned something interesting and you are not too hard on yourself and you let yourself rest when you need to, when you're even thinking about it. Just do it. Don't feel guilty about it. It's a good reset for your brain, and everything's going to be okay. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Traffic Jam with Cam. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave me a rating and review so that the podcast can reach more people. I post new episodes on Monday mornings, and you can find me on Instagram at Traffic Jam Podcast. Talk to you next time. Bye.